Welcome to paintlandscape.com. This is Pete Tarrant talking about painting landscapes with acrylic paints. I live in the Loch Lomond and Trossachs National Park, which is a super area to be in Scotland, and this is a great opportunity for artists and has been for many, many years. I spend quite a lot of time painting here. My studio's in the Trossachs. I also paint down on the west coast of Scotland quite a bit, and also in the east and some of the harbours. But my favourite area is probably on the west coast, where the light is rather fantastic. Anyway, what are we going to discuss today? Well, I'm going to start off with composition. And my composition usually starts with sketches. Lots of small sketches of and around the same subject. Once I've decided what my focal point is going to be, then I can get an idea as to how I'm going to portray that at the end of the day. But I'll only do that once I've actually finished some sketches, looked at the balance of the sketch, how it actually is going to be considered from the point of view of the weight of colour or light or dark, and how that's going to balance, and whether it's going to fit in the thirds, principles, etc. So let's get started on how I would actually start. Once you've chosen your subject, it should be really with these small sketches and plenty of photographs. To achieve what you want with the sketches, it's possibly a good idea to cut out a square out of a piece of card or a rectangle, depending on the format of your final piece that you're going to paint. Then you can view selectively what you're looking at by looking through this aperture and moving it forwards or away or to your eye. You can actually then adjust the size and the format of what you're actually going to achieve. And if you do your sketches on that base, then you'll get an idea as to what opportunities are open to you. Deciding where the focal point of the painting is going to be, or in fact in what the focal point is often the case. And it might only be a little white cottage, or it might be an animal, or it may be a very large mountain or a sailing boat in a harbour, but it's going to be a part of that painting which is the focal point. Where you place that in the painting is more than likely going to be on the basis of thirds. So if you divide your sketches up into 9 squares by drawing 2 vertical lines and 2 horizontal lines equally, then the points where your lines cross over are the areas where your focal point is possibly going to sit, or pretty close to that. And that will give you an idea as to the way that you're going to format your painting. The other thing is that you need to decide where the horizon is going to be, if there is a horizon, and that's more than likely going to be about a third down as well, or a third up from the bottom. Doesn't particularly matter as long as it's thirds, as long as it's not straight through the middle. Don't divide your painting up by sticking everything to the center of your painting. It does not work, and it doesn't create a balance, unless you're going to paint something which is going to be more of a design, and that would be an entirely different issue. Certainly when you're out in the open country, there's an awful lot to see and take in, and you are not going to achieve that in your painting. It can destroy your painting if you put too much in it. And that's often a very uninteresting piece of work, is when you try to put everything in it. It's very rarely when some of the panoramic shots work. They create something over a very large area, but which bit you're going to focus on is going to be the difficult part. And your eye will wander about looking for this center of attraction. So try to think very carefully about what you're going to put in your painting. Possibly you've got to really concentrate on one part. Photographers will decide on a very small area of a large landscape. And the reason for that is because it's so difficult. You can't achieve everything. So the more you cut out is probably going to be the benefit. It's sometimes a case of what you don't say to what you do say. And the same applies in painting. It's what you do put in or what you leave out that can be the important part. And there was a farmer who was having a problem with mice eating his produce. So they kept a barrel of nuts and a barrel of apples in the cellar. They were being eaten overnight, so the farmer's wife insisted on her husband putting a mousetrap next to each of the barrels. While they lay in bed one night, there was a clap and one of the traps went off. "Get up and see," said the farmer's wife. "I'll check in the morning." "No, go and find out now." So off he went down the stairs like a good husband, doing as he was told. And he got down to the cellar and she shouted, "Did you get in by the apples?" And he shouted, "No." He didn't need to say any more, but the same applies to your painting. Don't try to put everything in. Decide the bits which you need to put in. The eye will actually achieve an awful lot and join the dots up together without you even painting them. It's amazing how much the brain can actually assimilate and doesn't need to have bits and pieces finely painted work all over the place to achieve the result which you're looking for. You're not painting a photograph, and the days of actually recording artistic work as though it is a photograph are obviously gone. Finely painted work all over the place to achieve the result which you're looking for. You're not painting a photograph, and the days of actually recording artistic work as though it is a photograph are obviously gone. So far, we're working towards achieving a balance of our composition. So we've considered where the focal point is going to be somewhere a third position on the canvas. We've considered what the subject has got. We've got to have a focal point in the painting. So we've considered that. We've also discussed slightly a bit about weight and colour, and that's been covered more recently in findings of a thing called notan, Notan. And some of the masters actually use notan, possibly without even realizing there was such a word for it. Based on light and dark, and the light and dark can form part of the painting. And some of the masters actually, they're light and dark when you actually just break the painting right down to the high contrast. You can do this in Photoshop and just make it completely contrast your stick the painting or an idea of a painting into a black and white photocopier, and then you'll only achieve the very, very dark areas. And where these areas fall is going to make a very large contribution to your painting. And it might be that if they don't fall into the area of the thirds or create a walk into your painting, as in a curved road or anything of that nature, it can actually make a big difference to your painting. If you get that in, the correct notan, then your painting can be very, very successful. I do cover a little bit about this on my website. You'd be well advised to look at notan, probably Google it. There's lots of different ideas on notan. And if you also combine that by looking up also the golden rectangle, and the golden rectangle is being used for a long time and it does actually work. So have a look at that. It's possibly more suited to viewing that from a visual image than a discussion, but certainly look up golden rectangle. Also look up notan, and when you're actually composing your painting, doing your sketches, put in some of the shading for the dark areas that you see are going to be dark and what are going to be the light areas, and that will actually then give you an idea of the balance, because the balance is very important. Another interesting point is that apart from the light and the dark balance, there's also the balance as far as colour is concerned, and that becomes an important point. And certain colours react quite strongly with each other, and that can actually either make or break a painting. So be careful when you use colour that it doesn't actually lose or create a loss in the focal point, that it should actually go to the focal point. The eye must always be guided towards the focal point in the painting. Make it easy for for the person to see what you want to see, and then possibly discover other things which are a little bit more subtle. But I think you've got to get the balance right, and the balance will come by getting your painting or your concept of the painting based on thirds in both weight, position of the focal point, and also bear in mind the horizon, and you've got the start of a painting, which you could make something. The next thing we're going to discuss is we're going to discuss support, so what you're going to put your painting onto. But before we do that, let's just recap and make a little note. Think about the things that we've discussed in today, and that is one, possibly, first of all, small sketches. You must do small sketches and decide where the focal point is. Look at the notan, the strength and the weights in the painting. So make a note about notan.